Sometime back in May, I discovered a then ongoing webcomic contest that was being held on Webtoons. I'm sure it needs no explanation as it's pretty popular, but Webtoons is a platform where artists can post their own original digital comic series. I'm sure that if you're at all interested in anime and manga, then you probably already know what Webtoons is about. But anyway, at the time I had never entered any sort of webcomic contest before, and I wanted to try my hand at it. I was never going in with the intention of winning, since there are countless artists and writers who are definitely much better than me at creating this kind of content. But that didn't discourage me from trying anyway. And so, once I read through the official rules of the contest, I got to work. Between the genres I had to go with, I was originally going to go with action fantasy, since that's typically what I enjoy writing the most. However, there were two things that I needed to account for. The first thing was that each episode under the most epic genre needed to be 40 panels minimum, and that there needed to be at least 3 episodes submitted. I've never created a webtoon-like webcomic in my life. Unlike manga, which is created around the right-to-left reading style, webtoons are published in a way that favors scrolling vertically, where instead of individual panels sitting side by side, the panels of a webtoon sometimes blend together into the next one as you scroll. This was a style that I wasn't used to as someone who's pretty much only read manga in terms of comics. And the second thing was that at the time I discovered the contest, I had only a month left to complete my submission. So not only did I need a minimum of 120 panels in a format style that I wasn't used to, I also had no idea what kind of action fantasy story I wanted to write. So I shifted gears a little bit. Instead, I decided to make a submission under the most laughs genre. It did have a larger minimum episode requirement, but the overall number of panels that needed at minimum was 90. So I figured that with the time I had as a total novice, this was the best chance I had of making something. And in addition, I also already had something in mind for the story. I got to work pretty quickly on the work that I titled My Hopeless Life. I felt more confident about this genre than the action fantasy because I actually already had something in the works, kinda. A few years ago, I actually started working on a comic under a slightly different name that I eventually scrapped. The story I was writing previously intended to be more a romantic comedy, and it had a slightly different premise than what I ended up making here. And according to the genres that I was supposed to follow for the contest, I rewrote a good chunk of what I originally had, and changed the genre to a comedy slice of life, with some romance-themed jokes here and there. For this video, I was intending to record the entire drawing process, but I ended up being so focused in what I was trying to do that I ended up only recording the first page, which ended up being pretty different than what you see here because I had to make the comic in full color, something that I'm also not that experienced in doing, so that took up a lot of extra time as well. To summarize the comic, the main character, named Erin Akahara, has awful luck when it comes to simply going about her daily life. In the first few episodes, it's her trying her best to make it to school on time after she wakes up, but then falls back asleep after having a good dream, which does have some relevance later. And on her way to school, she gets into a couple random and unpredictable scenarios that end up slowing her down, eventually causing her to be late. There's a bit more that happens, but it's difficult to summarize something like a comedy slice of life comic since each part tends to be pretty episodic, with so much happening at once at a very quick pace. In the end, after I finally finished doing the last panels, I polished everything up and posted my submission. Only 10 works from each of the 4 genres would go on to be shortlisted into the next part of the contest, and there were a lot of submissions, so I was nervous about my chances. And on June 23rd, the shortlisted stories were announced. My story didn't make the cut, unfortunately, but with so many other stories and people who submitted their work, I was pretty much expecting this, especially as a newbie. And while I didn't win anything, I was still beyond satisfied with what I was able to do in less than a month's time. And my story did turn out pretty much how I wanted it. The experience alone was enough to get me pumped in looking into the next contest that I wanted to take part in, which at the time of making this video I've already submitted the newest manga that I made, which will also get its own video in the future. If anyone watching this now is an aspiring artist or writer, for manga, webtoon, or otherwise, don't be afraid to take a plunge into contests like these if you have a work or story you want to share with the world. Even if you don't win, the experience of taking part will stick with you, and might even make you more determined to take part in the next one. Don't let discouragement keep you from wanting to bring your stories to life in any sort of medium. If you're looking to get your ideas out there and share them with the world, there's no better time to take action than now. Thanks for watching.